Okay, okay. I know it's a few days to Pesach, Baruch Hashem, and everybody's so busy. So thank you for showing the love and for coming on. And thank you to Gail, who took out of her time to probably prepare and give us some beautiful Torah before Pesach. So I just want to introduce Gail. Gail and her husband, Rabbi Michalowicz, are the founders and the leaders of the West Mount Shul and Learning Center, which has probably brought hundreds of people back to Tshuva. Gail gives class. She's beloved, and she gives weekly Torah discussion groups and Torah classes to men and women. The Rebbetzin has an extraordinary ability to allow people to voice their thoughts and to contribute freely to discussions that get animated while maintaining a very high level of Torah and discourse and reaches surprising and deep conclusions. Gail works tirelessly to help and build up Jewish women in the Thornhill community. As a Rebbetzin, Gail comforts, advises, and influences women through relationship and life difficulties with an obvious love and caring. And as a personal trainer, Gail helps women seek change, set great exercise goals, and succeed in reaching them in one piece. Gail advises on other life goals, on reaching more happiness and balance, self-esteem, and family success. I also want to tell you that Gail, many years ago, donated her kidney. She was a match to a rabbi in Toronto who was living down south, and she donated her kidney to him. Gail and her husband, she's a mother of 9 beautiful children, and I'm not sure from what ages, from ages 11 to 29 years old, and the grandmother of 4, probably the grandmother of way more, and the kids are much older now, am I right?
Much older. Gail is much older. Baruch Hashem.
So with that, I feel privileged to bring you Rebbetzin Gail Michalowicz. Thank you, Gail.
Okay, so a big shout out to everyone. I'm like so proud of all of us, Baruch Hashem, being here at Erev Pesach. I think it's a real tribute to your priorities being very straight. Like shkoyach to everybody and to all of us really realizing like Erev Pesach, I think learning Torah and all the beautiful davening, like you couldn't be doing anything more worthwhile. So shkoyach to you. So I'm going to talk to you about a holy souvenir. So what does that mean, a holy souvenir? So let's start like this. Has anyone ever been to an amusement park? So we have like this very amusement park or amusement center, and we have this like very beautiful place in Toronto called Ripley's Aquarium, and it has like all these gorgeous fish from all over the world. It's really something to see. Now, what I've noticed when you go to an amusement park or an amusement center, whenever you have to exit, there's something very strategically placed at that exit. I don't know if we do this interactively, but if I would ask the question, I'm sure everyone would know the answer. What is it? Whenever you have to go out the door, right? You're on your way out of this amusement park. You've had a wonderful time. You've got your kids with you. You're tired and you want to go home. They always make you have to go through the souvenir shop. Anybody notice that? You could raise your hand if you did. Okay, so you've got to go through the souvenir shop. So the question is why? Because they know that's the moment to really get you to want to buy something. Because you've had this incredible day and now you want something to concretize, like something to hold, something to touch, something that's going to remind you of what a great time you had, right? So now comes your choice. Like, is it a mug? Is it a magnet? Is it a stuffed animal? But it's something that you're going to want to keep, because when you're going to look at it, it's going to be like, wow, I remember what a great time we had. So if you look at Pesach, some people will say it's like going on a real trip. It's almost like an amusement park, right? When you get into the parking lot, when you have to go and buy the food, the parking lot's usually full. And I would say, like, if you're me, it's like almost like bumper cars, okay? Trying to get that space without hitting another car. It's almost like bumper cars, right? And then when you're inside the grocery store, it's almost bumper carts, right? There's just so many people. And when you've got to go and get shoes and clothes for the kids, you have these long lineups like you have when you're waiting for the roller coaster. So in some ways, getting ready for Pesach seems like we're almost on our way to amusement park. And it's interesting because the Seder itself, right, when we finally get there, right, we're at that Seder, we're at the most like incredible experience. It's a place where we start to remember our connection to our Shem, the connection that we have to our families. It's a place where you develop so much amuna. It's a place where you can jump madregos. Like, it's a very interesting idea. You can actually jump levels. The siyata dishmaya is so much greater on that night of Pesach. Hashem is ready to redeem you. He's ready to help you. So you could really expand who you are. So it's a night when you really think about that is so amazing in the world that we live in today. Today, you find the world is turning upside down, and we on Pesach are turning everything right side up. And so, like, you stop and you feel it and you say, you know what, it's not that we have to do all this, and this is such a headache, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. No, it's we get to. We get to do this, and we get to feel this incredible joy, and we get to realize that Hashem has never forgotten us, and we have never forgotten Hashem. So once you go through an experience like that, I'm telling you, you need a souvenir. And when do you need that souvenir? You need that souvenir right by Tzafun, the Afikomen. And the Afikomen, actually, there's a concept of taking a piece of the Afikomen. This is my little piece, and it's been in my bag since last year. And I'm going to tell you a beautiful story around my Afikomen piece. It's actually a beautiful idea. It's a Minhag Yisrael, very Hasidic Minhag Yisrael, to take a piece from the Afikomen and save it throughout the year. And you can put it into your purse or hang it. Some people actually hang it, they frame it, they hang it on the wall. I put it in this little bag and I hang it on like a hook in my room. And I want to explain to you where I learned about this and where I got this idea from. But just this concept of having something that's very tangible, that went through the Seder with you, right? That you can look at and remember what you accomplished, right? And what your dreams are and what your hopes are is such an amazing idea. So where did I learn this from? I learned this from a very, very holy, special woman that I want to dedicate this class to. Her name is Leah Bas Asher Zeleg Halevi. Zecher, she was a tzadekes. We should remember her, and her neshama should have an aliyah. And I believe that many of you were privileged to hear her, right, Naomi? I think you had Mrs. Hochman speak. She was a Holocaust survivor. She died at 100 years old.
Right.
Yeah. Do you remember her? Yes. Yeah. So you had Mrs. Hochman, you had her. So she was the one who taught me this whole idea of taking a piece of the Afikomen. So I want to explain to you through her story. So when the Germans invaded Poland, and she was from a Hasidic family, I would say a very Halik family. Like if she would tell us these beautiful stories about her grandparents and who they were. And they were in a small shtetl, and there was only 10 other Jewish families living there. And everybody would come to them for Rosh Hashanah. They had a Sefer Torah, they were the shul, but it was all in their little home, which consisted of one room and a half. Okay. And they lived there, her parents, 5 children, and her Bubi and Zaidi. All right. So now the war is nebuch breaking out, and the father is very concerned. Like, what are they going to do? How's he going to save his family? So he goes to his Rebbe, and his Rebbe was in Yiddish. I don't know the words. He was called the Rebbe with the open eyes. So he comes to the Rebbe. He says, listen, please, Rebbe, I need a bracha. I need some help. So the Rebbe said to him like this: I'm going to give you 3 pieces of my Afikomen. 3 pieces that he had saved. I'm going to give you 3 pieces. I'm going to break off from my Afikomen 3 pieces. I want you to give them to these 3 children. So remember, there were 5 children, an extended family, but he only named these 3. He said, I'm giving you this piece of the Afikomen, these 3 pieces. I want you to take them, and I want you to give them to the children, and they should sew them into their clothes. And no matter what, they should never take this Afikomen away from their body. This little piece of Afikomen should never be taken away. Now you can imagine everyone else was killed except for the 3 children. It's a true story. The 3 children who had those pieces of Afikomen. Now, the 3 kids were even separated in the war. You know, some ended in some places, some ended in others. Mrs. Hochman herself pretended that she was a non-Jew through the war. She was saved by, sort of going what I would say underground as a non-Jew. And what's so interesting is she said one of the hardest things was that she never had a change of clothing. And then she really realized one of the greatest things was that she never really had a change of clothing. So she wore the same outfit all those years. She slept in it, she walked in it, she talked in it. That's all she had. And that meant that Afikomen was next to her body, just like the Rebbe said, all those years. When the war was over, the family tried to find each other. The only ones who were reunited was Mrs. Hochman and her 2 brothers, who also received that piece of Afikomen. And when they got together, not only did the 3 children reunite, the 3 pieces of the Afikomen reunited. Both the brothers had never lost the Afikomen either throughout the war. So it's an interesting idea. Where does all of this come from? So it's interesting that Naomi mentioned that I gave my kidney to a rabbi. The rabbi happened to be a Hornsteipler chassid, a very chashuv chassid who has a shul, and he lives now in Tom's River. And when Mrs. Hochman told me all of this about the Afikomen, I really wanted to get a good Dvar Torah. I want to understand, where is the depth to this? Where does this all come from? And I called him up, and he, gave me some ideas. And now I want to share with you this ideas. Okay, so the Afikomen is considered a skula, a divine charm. It's a divine charm for protection, for livelihood, and children. According to the Maor V'Shemesh, he tells us that the real essential mitzvah of Korban Pesach is represented in the Afikomen itself. Now, when you take a look at what the Afikomen is made out of, what is it? We say that you take the middle matzah and you break it into 2 pieces, right? One is a smaller piece and one is a larger piece. So the smaller piece is keneged, it's representative of the body, and the bigger piece is representative of the neshama. That's the piece of the Afikomen. So what do we see from this? Right away, you realize that the body is the second part to you. It's secondary. The primary piece of who you are is the neshama itself, right? So the body is the horse, and the neshama is the rider. So just looking at your Afikomen piece, then you need to remember that who you are is really a soulful person. You're a godlike person. That's your essence. That's who you really are. So we don't have to be so worried about size 2, size 3, size 5, size 6. We don't have to be worried about all these bodily urges. Really, your main purpose and your main reality and what you really want to put your koiches in is into the neshama part of you. Now, he also said some other beautiful ideas. I'm just trying to look for them for a second. Okay. All right. Now, matzah, we said, right, what is matzah? It's the bread of Amunah. So every time that you're looking at this Afikomen throughout the year, what are you remembering? You're remembering Ein Od Milvado. There is no one else but Hashem. All of the things that may be taking you down, there's the souvenir. Right? Hashem redeemed us. He redeemed us in the past. He will redeem us in the future. And in fact, the word matzah, mem, tzadi, hey, stands for these words, which is a beautiful thing. Michol tzura hitzilenu. From every trouble, from every narrow strait, Hashem will save us. Okay? And that's a beautiful thing. You're looking at all of us today. There's no one here who isn't in some kind of a constricted reality. Right? Whether it's in our health, our emotional health, our physical health, our spirituality, our family, our relationships. So this is something beautiful. You have this souvenir to take with you, to stop and to realize. And not only that, one of the 6 constant mitzvahs that we have is to remember every day that we were taken out of Mitzrayim. So if you hold on to this little piece of Afikomen and you take a look at it, you're going to remember that mitzvah and you're going to get that mitzvah. So here's what I also want to tell you. Mrs. Hochman actually would carry this piece of Afikomen in her purse. So she would take the Afikomen piece, break it into two pieces. One would be framed on the wall, and one she would take in her purse. And it's interesting that there's concepts of people, Hasidim, who will not travel anywhere without the Afikomen. And there's a story of Sir Montefiore that he was on an incredible voyage on the ocean, and it was in a terrible storm. He actually took his piece of Afikomen that he traveled with, and he threw it into the ocean, and they say that the storm stopped. So what's going on here? We have to be, I want you to understand very carefully here. I'm not telling you like this is like a lucky charm, okay? I'm not telling you, take your Afikomen like you have a little rabbit's foot. We're not saying that. We have to understand that the Afikomen is representative of such important kedusha and holiness and depth and understanding that what's going to make this Afikomen work, it activates through your machshavos and what your thoughts bring you to do. That's what's going on here. I look at this Afikomen, and then it reminds me that Hashem took me out of my tzuras, so I can look and scream out to Hashem, and I can daven to Him. It's not that this is my lucky charm, and I rub it together, and now I can chas v'shalom go to the casino. Okay? It's not working that way. I want you to really appreciate what's going on here. All right. And I want you to appreciate that you have this incredible opportunity to go through this Seder and all the work that you did and to take a little souvenir home with you. Right? Like anyone who's ever gone to the amusement park or gone on their trip, and then you take that little magnet, I love Israel, and you have it up on your refrigerator. Every time you look at it, you get this like, oh, yeah, Israel, I gotta go back, So that's what we're talking about when we're looking at this now. Okay, so let's see some more other beautiful ideas. Okay, if you look at the Gematria of the word Afikomen, its numerical value is 287, which is the same numerical value for the word Rofe, healer. Okay, this is a beautiful thing, right? So many of us know people, or even ourselves, who may not be well. So you could take a look at this little souvenir that you have in your hand, and you have to remember, what the Gematria of Afikomen is healer, is Rofe. No, I don't have to give up hope. The Rofe of the world, the Rofe of each and every one of us, it's Hashem Himself. So you could say, Hashem, you are my Rofe. You could send me shlichim and send me the best. Send me the best doctors and the best medications and all these kinds of things. But they're just, from you. They're just in your hands. Their success is only yours. You are the Rofe of emotional, spiritual, and mental ailments. Now, what about livelihood? Remember, I told you that it's a skula for livelihood. So where did we see the skula for livelihood? When you look at the word Afikomen, the first three letters, Aleph, Pei, Yud, which stands for Poseach Es Yodecha. Okay, Aleph Pei Yud Poseach Es Yodecha. So whenever we're davening, we say Ashrei, and people in benching, you'll see people will open up their hands, because what's going on? We're asking Hashem, send down the Sheva, send down the Bracha, send down the Parnasa, send down all the things that we need. Open your hands, and our hands are open to receive it. So we're living in very precarious times. There's inflation everywhere. Whatever it costed you last year to make Pesach, I don't know if anybody noticed, it was a lot more this year, right? A lot more tzedakahs, a lot more people asking you for help. So you're going to look at your Afikomen, you're not going to get distraught. You're not going to get scared. You're going to say, you know what? Poseach es yodecha. That's the truth of my hishtadlus. Right? My hishtadlus, my true hishtadlus when it comes to Parnasa is only you, Hashem. It's only really you. All right? So the Afikomen is interesting. It's the last thing that you eat. It's your last piece of dessert. It's your last dessert. So a lot of times, I know for me especially, I think the only part of the meal I really care about is dessert. Now that I think about it, you give me dessert for all courses. All right, so it's the dessert. It's the good piece. It's the yummy part. That's what you want to remember. You know what I mean? In the end, it's all good. And if it's not good, it's not the end. That's what we think about when we see the Afikomen. It's the end. It's the dessert. It's such an amazing reality. Okay, so let's see what I wrote over here. Okay, So here's what we can do. It's just a nice way to end it. You find yourself feeling in dire straits. You find yourself, overwhelmed with family issues, with the kids, with your spouse. You're going to look at the matzah, and what are you going to say? Mikol tsura hatzileni. From every trouble you save us. You're going to feel hopeless. Like, when is Mashiach coming? Like, it's tired. I don't know about you. I'm very tired. I really feel like since COVID, I feel like it's like a dent in my car. I feel like the world is dented and I can't seem to straighten out the dent. So we're going to look up and we're going to say, what, Hashem, this matzah, it represents how you redeemed us, how you took us out, and how on Pesach we were willing. Like, you have to realize, it's a big thing that the Jewish people were willing to take a lamb and shecht it in front of the Mitzrim. Like, we took their gods and we shechted it, and we really had this emunah in you. And guess what? Even in today, in 2023, like, when you see people still willing, really, to turn their house over and to shop and to do this and to do that and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait for redemption, right? Wait. So it's like, Hashem, I know you're waiting to accept us. We're here to accept you. So you look at this and say, you know what? You did it once, Hashem. You'll do it again for us. And so, like, all of these things, right? All of these things are all what Mrs. Hochman devoted her whole life to. In the end, she lived a life of 100 years. Like, really, I keep feeling like saying Kanai Nahara. She lived a life of 100 years. And in those 100 years, she probably ate many, many Afikomens and saved many, many Afikomens and looked at those Afikomens and took the messages that those Afikomen had and really instilled it in herself. And in the end, like, she wrote her book on her journey through the Holocaust, and she called it The Miracles of Hashem. And she told all of us, no matter what, Ein Od Milvado. And that really is the message of the Afikomen. So I was very privileged. I took her idea of putting the Afikomen in my purse, and unfortunately, it turned into matzah mail. Okay. Wasn't the best thing. Okay. I went to Mrs. Hochman and I told her, Mrs. Hochman, I don't have an Afikomen piece. I only have matzah meal. Like, what should I do? Make schnitzel? So she said to me, no, you don't have to worry. And she gave me a piece of her Afikomen. And in Mirz Hashem, I plan to hold on to that piece. Hashem should give me the koyach. It'll come with me to Eretz Yisrael when Mashiach comes. And I'll keep it for my 120 years. But this was the souvenir that I wanted to tell you about. And I just wish you all a Chag Kosher v'Sameach. I wish us all that we can really internalize the messages of Hashem being our protector and our Rofe and our Redeemer, and the person who is Poseach es Yotecha, and give us all the bracha and the shefa that we need, and to really just take us all home. And I have to give a very special shout out to one of my best friends who I'm staring at, who I haven't seen in so long, and that is to Susan Eklov, but I think your name is, what's your Hebrew name?
Sarah Leah, and you should know, I'm sitting in the mall against a thing because I found out you were speaking today, and I thank you for sharing. That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful.
Okay, so I'm so happy for all of us, and thank you, and it's so nice to see Sarah Leah. Okay, so I'm not sure what the rest of your program is, but I know, like, if Nomi's in charge of it, it's something amazing. Okay.
No, thank you, Gail. Thank you so much. Do you have a minute for anybody?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if I can.
You know what's amazing, Gail, is like, you've always been so real. And you said what I think what everybody is really feeling is that everybody's so tired. It's so tired, but it's so funny. You said that when she wore the Afikomen, here she was, with this clothes on that she never changed. And when you think about it, you would say, like, oh my gosh, like, how could something like this happen? And how can somebody wear the same clothes? but it's so interesting, I was speaking to somebody in Eretz Yisrael today, a very holy family, and she was telling me that her 19-year-old son has been sitting in prison since Purim, and that she doesn't know if she's going to be able to survive this. And it's so funny because I said to her, maybe Hashem loves him so much that he's protecting him. And it's almost similar, right? It's like, we don't know ultimately, right? In that moment that seems so difficult, really we don't have that yet, that ability.
Yeah, we don't. And you see, like with the story of Yosef, like imagine him sitting in prison, like, and then it turned to be something so incredibly different. And the same I even felt with Rabbi Rubashkin. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
He ended up soaring. Like now we all, we all know Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Amuna, Bitachon, Geula. Like he changed it for all of us. So you just never ever know. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. I totally.
I was at a wedding on Friday, believe it or not, a Friday morning wedding overlooking the walls of Jerusalem. Wow. And Jonathan Pollard was there with his new wife.
Oh, wow.
And like, what a perfect example of pure Emunah,
Yeah. The Mitzvah Hashem, like we just got to all hang on. Okay, that's what it is. It's all hanging in there.
Does anybody have any questions for Gail?